When I finally hung up my footy boots, having no footy to worry about meant I could pursue other interests, one of those being architecture. Now, I've been involved in a number of residential projects and smaller commercial builds, so I've come across a number of architects in my time. And let me tell you, from my experience, the very best architects are passionate, they're articulate, they're visionary, and perhaps most importantly, not short of an opinion or two. In this series, Designing Dreams, I meet some of New Zealand's very best architects and visit their favourite Kiwi homes. Big, small, old, new, all sorts of amazing houses all over the country. Along the way, we'll talk about the big housing issues, like affordability and sustainability, and what the future of the New Zealand house just might be. Plus, I'm always on the lookout for ideas and inspiration for my own projects. So I get the feeling we're going to learn plenty, we'll enjoy ourselves, and we'll get the inside word on what it takes to design dreams.
I came to Auckland in 1977. I'd been accepted into architecture school, and then I rocked up here at Cheltenham Beach. And I thought, wow, you can actually live in a city and have the beach as well. And I fell in love with Auckland right then and there. But the city didn't feel very loved when I first arrived. And I think that's what attracted me to architecture. How do you make things better? How do you learn to live with the land and how to understand people's needs? And how do you create that sense of belonging? And that is a challenge which still faces us today.
Mind your step.
Oh. It's worth it, don't you think?
It's certainly an outstanding view, that's for sure.
I love coming up here. I feel like I'm at the centre of Auckland from here.
To Māori, this whole area was known as Tāmaki Makaurau, and many of their pā were dotted around the Waitemata harbour. When Pākehā arrived, they settled harbourside too, including down below us here at Devonport.
Devonport was very much part of the city because of the harbour. But over time, as the city expanded further out that way, this area became a backwater.
Yes.
And also this land was cleared to become farmland and then slowly divided into quarter-acre sections and wooden houses that you see now.
Isn't that amazing that you say that it's a backwater, but now standing up here and you look around, like, this is some of the most expensive real estate in the country. So it's an interesting story how it got from being a backwater to here. The North Shore was a backwater right up to when the Auckland Harbour Bridge opened in 1959. But before that, land here was dirt cheap. That enabled a bunch of idealistic young architects, calling themselves group architects, to put their ambitious theories into practice. Group member Bruce Rotherham designed and built one of the company's very first houses here in Devonport. And although it's worth a fair bit now because of its land, back in the day this was a prime example of affordable housing for working families. And it's Julie's first choice in her selection of favourite New Zealand homes. Well, okay, Julie. The show's called Designing Dreams. It's a little underwhelming, I've got to be honest.
I must admit I was the same when I first saw it as a student, but you have to think back. This house was designed barely 5 years after World War II.
Yes.
And all these young men were coming back to New Zealand, you know, eager to get on with their lives and pick up the pieces. But also, many of them wanted to build a new world here in New Zealand. Egalitarian, that was so important.
Yes.
So that, you know, you could house your average plumber and teacher in decent homes.
Yeah. This was a lot cheaper to build than the houses.
And and affordable was really important because there was rationing, there was very little materials. To me, it's a big timber tent.
Yeah, it's like a shed.
Yeah.
It looks like it should be on a farm somewhere.
Shed, exactly.
Excellent. Well, I'm super excited to
Okay.
have a look at it now.
Yeah,
Let's have a look.
It's hard to imagine the pressure on most societies after the Second World War. Millions of people were homeless and they had to find new ways to get people into homes. It had to be really efficient. Because remember, after the war too, there was a lot of stringency on what you could use and you weren't allowed to be extravagant. That was quite a constraint.
Wow. Now I get it. Now I get it. That is amazing, isn't it? Wow.
Very low key.
Wow, that is unbelievable.
It's so unexpected.
Isn't it?
From that,
open that door, you would
yeah.
never expect to see this.
Yes.
Like it's like a living wall.
And it also gives this beautiful soft green light, which was not unlike the studios in Paris, which I'm sure Rotherham would have visited.
Yes.
And originally he thought he'd have a drafting studio, an architectural studio in here. How relaxing is this?
It's incredible, it really is. Julie tells me the Rotherham House worked out costing £1 per square foot, just a third of the average cost to build a house in Auckland in 1951. Incredible, really, but then group architects were very focused on budget.
Rotherham stripped everything back.
Yes.
You know, they built it themselves, and they just stripped away anything that was unnecessary.
Tell me about this, because this here, the mezzanine.
Really unusual, isn't it?
It's really unusual. It's not going to pass health and safety nowadays, is it?
Nope. it's like a sort of held-up walker, isn't it, within the space?
It really is.
It's a very muscular house.
Yes.
You know, very sinewy. You can feel everything works. I mean, this amazing bluestone floor, which would have probably come from the Mount Eden quarries. You know, you would have picked up. You know, these are big chunks.
Yes.
You know, got those cheaper.
And the same with the
And then the brick,
bricks.
this beautiful brick, which comes from the local Duda's Brickworks, which was just down the road there. And these, you can see how rough these are.
Yes.
These are probably even seconds of plastering bricks. So
Yeah, but they're like, it's really, it's needed.
Get
It
that
just
lovely
adds character.
texture to it, don't you? Only lean athletes allowed up here, Matthew.
Oh, back in the day, Wow, this is incredible, isn't it? Look at that. It's like a skateboard ramp.
It is.
If you'd had a few to drink and you got out of bed and you were sleepwalking...
I think if you hit it at speed, maybe.
Yeah, you could probably end up over there at some point. Remember, there's no insulation in the walls or ceiling, but Bruce Rotherham did have a simple and inexpensive ventilation solution, one inspired by the Pacific houses he was aiming to emulate. Oh,
and this is what...
genius. That's just so effective, though. Like, you can just feel the draft come straight through.
It's got the dark, overarching roof, the reflected light, you know, coming in hot outside, being reflected into the space. It's got the horizontal floor surface where every life is lived, and no walls. This house, for me, is a Pacific house. Slowly, we're turning away from the European towards the Pacific. This is why this house is so important, because it's a real marker in the sand of that change.
Yes. Even though this is one of Group Architects' first homes, the company's philosophy hardly changed throughout its 30 years in business.
For me, I think their legacy was that they actually did have a philosophy, and they were very clear they wanted to build functional, wholesome houses for the ordinary New Zealander. And they built them. And at the same time, they're also sort of trying to work out just how to build a place that's relevant for their society at their time in this country. So while they still had all the pragmatics, they also had the dream. And you have to remember, modernism's a social progress. It's not a style. It's been going for centuries of people have tried to do new things to make lives better. So that's why their work remains powerful. It's not a style, it's an idea.
Architect Julie Stout is taking me to see some of her favourite New Zealand houses, and we've come to downtown Auckland for her second choice.
Here you have Queen Victoria, of course, you know, the whole axial planning.
On the way though, just a little detour to Albert Park, one of my favourite places when I was a university student nearby.
I wanted to bring you here because not many people are aware that this Albert Park, where we are, is actually the centre of the original Auckland plan.
Really?
Have you ever seen that?
No, I didn't know about that.
It was originally a papakainga. A Māori had a village up here. When the European came, they realised how important this site was too, and they wanted to set up their city here. So the Māori were moved off, shunted out to the side, and in about, I think, 1841, Felton Matthews, who was a young surveyor who came out here, this is the original plan of Auckland. And this is quite important. They did circuses, you know, radiating circles of residential areas like you see in Europe, in England. Exactly. See it, can't you? Very much overlaying a European view over this landscape. And all around here, the residential buildings were going up. You start seeing them here for the gentry. And the professionals, the doctors, were up here. And down below was the city.
Albert Park has also got a great view of one of the most popular, you could say iconic Auckland landmarks. It was controversial back in the day though, with claims it was Māori Gothic, a wedding cake, and fears it would scare little old ladies in the park.
This is the Old Arts Clock Tower, which was designed by Roy Lippincott, who won an international competition to design one of the first buildings for the University of Auckland campus. And he put in a whole lot of little details of fern fronds and flax within this building to make it of this place. And it just interests me that someone who'd never been here, from Chicago, instinctively understood a spirit of this place, which is actually far more in keeping, particularly now, with New Zealand.
Beautiful, isn't it? Today, this part of town is dominated by the university, private businesses and hotels, but there are still some permanent residents and some original apartment blocks still standing, like Courtville, a particular favourite of Julie's.
This is one of the most graceful apartment buildings in Auckland. I mean, what a gorgeous building.
It is a beautiful building. I don't think there's many buildings that look like this nowadays, are there?
And I love the way it turns the corner. So you get the two apartment buildings and this beautiful entrance. I mean, how gracious is that? I used to live here in the 80s, so I want to show you.
Excellent. Courtville was New Zealand's first self-contained apartment building and has retained its style and charm over the years. A little slice of Paris and central Auckland. And Julie's rent for living here, a princely $25 a week. I'll tell you what, you'd get fit walking up and down here, wouldn't you?
You can see how this is the heart of the building. It's terrific, eh?
Really, really pretty.
Okay, this is it.
Easy. Wow. This was Julie's actual Courtville apartment when she was a student at architecture school, just up the road. There have been a few changes over time, but many original details have been preserved. And talk about a room with a view.
How special is this?
Oh, that's very pretty, isn't it? Geez, you were lucky to live here back in the day by being a student and to be just across the road from the university and such a wonderful building. What was it like living here?
Oh, pretty fantastic. I mean, really, you know, coming from Palmerston North and here, to be here, which is one of the more stunning spaces. And look at all these little ribbons and curtains and tassels.
You don't see that in today's buildings.
And you don't often get to be so up front and so close to it.
Yeah, that's very true. Very true. You see it from the street, but you don't get to appreciate it close up.
And there were only 900 people living in the city at the time.
Wow.
So, yeah,
Gee, that is a blast from
these
the
were
past.
sort of undervalued enormously. So we were very lucky to live here.
But just 900 people living downtown in the 1980s was an easy group to ignore. Easy too for barely protected heritage buildings, like His Majesty's Theatre, to be targeted by developers. Despite a valiant campaign, it was demolished in the dead of night. In those days, nothing was safe.
You wouldn't believe it, but in the mid-1980s, they wanted to pull this building down.
Really?
Yeah. It was the start of the new Labour government, and the neoliberal economic reforms were happening. And these buildings were owned by the Railways Department, don't ask me why. But they were surplus to requirements, so they wanted to offload them. And we heard about this, and you can imagine the consternation in the chicken coop that night.
Yes.
And we were sort of, you know, what do you do? We ended up taking the government and the council to the High Court.
You guys did?
Yes. And we won.
Wow.
Which you can imagine the euphoria. But it was also, the clincher was thanks to the Right Honourable Helen Clark.
No way.
Just to see how young we all were. So,
Oh,
so
that's
here's
you
me.
there.
Yes, yeah.
Look, it's you. You were a little punk rocker there.
You've got to speak up. You realise that your role, particularly as an architect and as someone living here, is you have a responsibility to the heritage of your city.
Helping to save Courtville was the beginning of Julie's significant work as an activist architect, and was also the place she went on to live with fellow architect David Mitchell, the man who became her partner in life and business. Together they moved out of Courtville and across the inner city to Freemans Bay. The result was what's been called one of the most beautiful houses in Auckland, built on 2/3 of an old tennis court. The tight inner city site was a challenge to Julie and David, and they pondered what to do during 6 months sailing in the South Pacific. No surprise with the inspiration then. The house is smooth and sleek, like a finely tuned yacht. And just like the Rotherham House we saw earlier, so very clearly Pacific style.
And what I love is this close proximity to the street. So you can be sitting here having dinner and rabbiting on to people as they go past, and you really get to meet people that way. I love it. I think it's the way urban living should be. That relationship with the street and people. You can see the roof here too, this sort of latticed roof, putting small pieces of timber together and each one individually screwed to form an arch which takes the weight. And then, of course, filtering that light as you go further out so you get this beautiful transition.
Julie and David lived here for nearly 20 years before selling to Lance and Nikki Herbst. Although they are architects too, they've preserved and restored the house instead of making big changes. The kitchen, for instance, is largely original and still small, like a galley on a yacht.
Quite honestly, how much do you need in a kitchen? Nikki and Lance have put this in, which I think is terrific because it then provides just another place for people to sit and talk. Oh, look. Isn't that beautiful? Bless them.
This is Julie's first time back in the house since selling 12 years ago.
It's very emotional, but it's all happy emotions. We had great parties here. You know, you get 100, 150 people packed in here, raving, and then dancing happening here. It'd get pretty wild. So, Yeah, great memories.
Of course, coming back here takes Julie right back to when the house was just a bright, shining idea, riding an ocean wave in the South Pacific.
This drawing depicts where our heads were at when we started designing this house. It all stemmed from how we lived, and we were up in the Pacific. Every night out in the cockpit, so you were sleeping out under the bimini and the stars, and with the water lapping right just there. And one of us cooking literally 2 feet away on this little gas cooker inside. It was that thing that just became completely riven in our souls, really, as how happiness was lived.
When Julie and David returned from sailing, their bold ideas had to be somewhat refined. The demands of the tight site meant this essentially did have to be an urban townhouse, albeit one with the Pacific beating heart.
One of the things in the Pacific were the dark rooms that we liked, that were more inward focused. And when you put walls in, you have to then think carefully how you get the light in. A lot of thought went into putting the openings in the walls to frame the views, and also bringing the light in from above, sunlight. On a sunny day, it is like a big sundial as the sun moves along.
Although so much of this house is shaped by the South Pacific, there's a clear Asian influence too. The beautiful Japanese water feature at the back.
And so this easy to operate door. Oh, it's a great deal of effort to access a room that you can't go out onto, but this is the water room. It reminds me of Pete Bosley, who said, gosh, this house is like a boat. It's floating at the front and sinking at the back. But it's fabulous here when it's pouring with rain. This just becomes completely different and very animated, and you're safe in here. Funnily, as far as I know, no one's ever fallen in here, and there's one cat was the only one that's upended in there.
The Heke Street house has won many accolades and awards over the years. People just love it. And to Julie, that's what really counts.
It's very touching that people respond to it. But that's what I think architecture is. You try to create places that touch people and move them. Looking back, I realized how really important it was going to the Pacific. It just completely transformed our way of thinking. It just got us out of that whole European architectural, mindset and just into another world of where people made their own houses, were more connected with beauty. It's a very picturesque house and a very romantic house. And I think that's what people respond to. It's a place where people can really just come together.
Julie Stout loves Auckland just as much as I do, and she's made quite a contribution with her architecture, often in collaboration with her partner in life and business, David Mitchell. Sadly, David passed away in 2018, and from what I know already, it's a damn shame I never met him.
He was a very warm-hearted person, very perceptive and articulate. But he also had a great sense of humour. He didn't take himself seriously. So he was really good company.
Sounds like a real good bloke.
Yeah, you'd have liked him. For David, architecture was an art. And the most important thing for him was that architecture touched you emotionally. So that even the ordinary person was moved by the architecture. He was real stickler for detailing.
Perfectionist.
Perfectionist, you're right. And it's that layering of thought that give his buildings a real complexity. And one of his finest buildings is just up the road from here, which is what I wanted to show you.
Can we walk?
We can walk.
Oh, let's do that.
Okay.
Come on, then. In the early 1980s, David was commissioned by high-profile business couple Alan and Jenny Gibbs to build a house in refined upmarket Parnell. The Gibbs don't live here anymore, but it's a classic of its time that still resonates today. Wow,
Okay.
it's pretty amazing. Look at that.
So here you get the sense of the house. This is the centre. But as you can see, the space is about display in the yard.
Yeah.
But it's also the open pavilion.
It's very
That-
artistic, isn't it?
Yeah.
No surprise there. The Gibbs were serious art collectors. Lots from New Zealand, lots from their travels overseas, especially to New York, where they fell in love with abstract modernism, a passion that led directly to this place.
In the 1980s, Alan and Jenny were living in Titirangi, surrounded by bush.
Yes.
And they were ready to move to town.
They obviously wanted something very different.
Yes, they wanted to leave the past behind them, but they also wanted a house that was a three-dimensional sculpture.
I guess people would have been quite shocked when they saw it. They would have been like, wow, what is this? Like the steel girder, which is holding up nothing.
Exactly. There's been a few jokes about that, or
Isn't
the
that
effort
like-
to hold up a hole.
But that actually kind of makes this house what it is.
Yes, because this shape here is a negative wall. You know, it's the absence of a wall.
Yeah.
Without that beam, it felt too light for Alan.
Oh, okay. So this originally wasn't
And
going to be in here?
No.
Of course, it's not unknown for house plans to change, sometimes dramatically. But here David was pretty much on the money right from the get-go.
These are the original design drawings that David did to present the design to the Alan and Jenny. All hand-drawn. No computers, no fly-through, nothing, just no model. Just these drawings. You've got people's ideas and you've got to somehow pull that together and make it a three-dimensional object. And it's still in your head.
It'd be pretty hard to look at that and go, oh, I know what that's going to be.
Yes.
Like, so that drawing there...
That's
That's that.
pretty much, isn't it?
It's like spot on.
And that was day one. So here you are, closer to the ceiling.
What is that? Is that like an aluminium?
No, it's mini corrugated iron.
Oh, wow.
Stainless steel. That's sort of an art piece in itself, really.
Yes.
It reflects the light, the water off the pool goes up there, and at night you get the car lights going over. So you get this kinetic art light thing happening on the ceiling as well.
See, you would not think from being in there that there's a pool out here. I do believe that David actually jumped off the roof, but did he jump off the roof?
I don't think he was that brave, but we'll let that myth continue.
That's fairly high, so maybe he jumped off here.
Yeah, he was very professional, Matthew, as you can see. And as you've noticed, no balustrades.
Yeah,
so this is like a negative balustrade. This is to keep you back from the edge.
So you break your ankle before you fall into the pool.
Exactly, but you get a breath of air before you...
Yeah, that's it. But it's actually really dramatic, isn't it? It's amazing. See, if I bought this house, I'd make that...
Now you're talking.
I'd make that a swim-up bath area there, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Look at the sun, like it's just sun all day.
And look, you got the view.
Yeah, it really is incredible. He was a very clever man, that David Mitchell.
He was a good architect.
I think good is probably, it's probably an understatement, to be honest. I'd say great.
He'd love to hear that.
Yeah.
The beauty and the strength of the house that David did for the Gibbses allowed architects to look overseas, to use different materials, to be more abstract in their designs, and look to these overseas examples that were very influential at the time of postmodernism and deconstruction. Its idea was strong. It was a pavilion. It all gathers around that central open space where the art is.
For Julie and David's architectural company, Mitchell Stout, the success of the Gibbs house in Parnell led directly to new commissions. Art galleries, for instance, including one in the leafy Auckland suburb of Titirangi that's connected to some fascinating history. I've learned some incredible things while working on this series, including the story of this chap here. His name is William Swanson Bloomfield, and he was a fighter pilot with the Royal Flying Corps in World War I. But William had previously studied architecture in the United States, and that was always going to be his calling. After the war, William returned to New Zealand and became the country's first registered architect of Māori descent. He was Ngāti Kahungunu on his mother's side, and he went on to have an illustrious career in the architectural field, designing many beautiful buildings, including Lopdale House in Titirangi, or as it was when William designed it in the late 1920s, Hotel Titirangi. Now, the hotel didn't last long. The fact that it couldn't get a liquor license wouldn't have helped. The building went on to be renamed Lopdale House and became very well known, especially as an art gallery. Nowadays, that role has been taken on by a new building next door, Te Uru Waitakere Contemporary Gallery, opened in 2014 and designed by Julie Stout and David Mitchell.
We got involved in early 2003 when the Lopdale House Development Trust approached us for ideas. They had a problem. They had a heritage building that required a seismic upgrade, and they also had the Uru Gallery, which at the time had no services befitting a proper art gallery space. We drew up a few options for them in a very constrained space. And option 3 was, well, let's restore the heritage building to what it really should be, and then how about a separate new gallery alongside? And we presented that to the trust.
From that point, though, it took over 10 years to raise the money and complete the project. 5 art galleries stacked on top of each other down a steep site linked by a magnificent staircase.
Well, strangely enough, we always imagined the stair would look just like this. But can you imagine how difficult it was to A, draw, and then the absolute tour de force of the builders to make this beautiful curvaceous stair out of bits of plywood, flat, inert sheets, and curving and bending them into place, and then lining them with gibboard. I think they did a fantastic job. And here's the main gallery. Lovely light, isn't it? Which is all thanks to this big diffuser which hangs sort of cloud-like in the space, modulating the light and allowing the artificial light to be reflected back. So you get this beautiful soft light within this space.
The back of Te Uru was another architectural opportunity for Julie and David. They came up with this dramatic glass curtain wall, like a net thrown over the outside of the building. One of the inspirations was a work from Colin McCann's French Bay series, painted in his studio just down the road. It's got the trees and the wind. Everything's on a bit of a lean out west.
These stairs originally started as the fire egress stairs, and it didn't take long for us to realise what a fantastic opportunity there was to actually put you right out into this landscape. They're a bit daunting, I admit, for most people, but as one person said, it's like rock climbing for art lovers. But it's worth the effort, so come on up. It was terrific to be part of the Te Uru project. The West had been so poorly served with their art facilities. A lot of creative people live out there. So it was great to sort of slowly build up this momentum and then finally get the building built. And just to see the pleasure of people going and seeing terrific shows in a space that they go, wow.
Nearing the end of my time with Julie Stout, she took me back to Takarunga, Mount Victoria, with a wonderful view of Auckland and one of its greatest challenges. It's one Julie is very involved in as president of Urban Auckland, an independent group keeping a close eye on design issues in our biggest city.
Well, I've got to tell you, Julie, we've been up here before, but you never get sick of this view, do you?
Well, maybe you could.
Are you talking about the ugly port over there?
I certainly am. You can hardly miss it, can you?
It is certainly an eyesore, and it's an eyesore on the Auckland harbour. There's no doubt about that.
I first got involved when the Ports of Auckland were wanting to expand Bledisloe Wharf. You can see that giant car park right in the centre of the harbour, our city over there.
Yeah, just what we need.
Exactly. Well, they wanted to expand that 220 metres out into the harbour.
What, into the ocean?
Way. Yes, yes.
Wow.
Which they argued was essential for securing goods. But it's also a land grab. And so we just said, no, it's time to stop. We ended up taking them to court and winning, which was phenomenal. But it gives us this opportunity now to start looking at the future of our city and the future of our waterfront. How do we make a resilient city? And how do we make an elegant city? And that's the big dream, Matthew. As an architect and an Aucklander, and having been here for many years, I see my role as teaching young people how to re-look at their city, look at new ways of building a future. And I think what a privilege that is. And I think the more people start to see other alternatives, the more excited they'll get about their city. And what a great thing that would be.
Ironically, perhaps, the future of Ports of Auckland is essentially about access to water, something Aucklanders naturally take for granted. After all, the city is surrounded by the sea, and the dream lifestyle is living right beside it. And so it was when Julie and David finally decided to leave their beautiful Hickey Street house. It was to build their forever home at the beach.
We sold the boat, and then we had grandchildren coming along. Hickey Street was starting to feel pretty small, and I realised I had to get my mother up here to be near us in Auckland. So we started looking around for property, and you know that battle.
Yeah.
And it took about 2 years when we finally spotted this section here in Narrowneck.
It is probably one of the most beautiful views in Auckland, isn't it, really? In fact, all along this coastline, it's ridiculous. We don't know how lucky we are. You're just up on the hill. Should we go and take a look?
Yeah, definitely. I'll get the coffee on.
Excellent. It is a real wow factor, eh?
Yeah.
It's a beautiful home. Wow, look at that.
You see here, it's the precast concrete panels, and then the roof is timber, so it's lightweight and with corrugated plastic on it to allow the light in. You get these shapes here which sort of become sort of sails. So that's a studio for guests to live in, and then Mum's apartment down below here. So she had her own little scene. And then this ramp was for Mum to come up and down.
It's definitely out there for this particular area, even though there's a mishmash of houses around here.
Sure.
But you would have, did you get any blowback or
Did we
pushback?
what? Yes, apparently the whole lower North Shore were talking about it, which is always scary. So as you can see, Matthew, there's echoes of the Hickey Street house there.
Yes.
Okay, so this brings you through to the front door.
Okay, the front door, which is the back door.
No, the front door, which is the front door.
Fair enough.
The basis of the house design was from a sustainability point of view. We were going for a mass construction.
What is a mass construction?
As opposed to timber, which is lightweight and,
Yes.
and doesn't retain the heat unless you put masses of insulation. This has got the insulation built in it, so you even out the temperature, so it's cool in summer and warm in winter when you've heated it up. And you can see here too, the veranda, the sail, and that collects all the rainwater. So that gets fed into that 6,000 litre tank there, and so we use that for all the water, but apart from the kitchen.
So you're not drinking water, just a shower and all that stuff?
No, so that keeps us going most of the time. And see how the ivy keeps the house cool in summer too.
Yeah.
We wanted that concrete bunker, but then for it to blend in. You know, I kept telling the neighbours, you won't even notice it.
Oh no, I'm pretty sure they've noticed it.
Yeah.
Jeepers creepers, look at that. Isn't that amazing? Wow.
It's all about the view, isn't it?
Isn't
Here
it
on
right?
the
You're
North
drawn
Shore.
straight to the view.
Yeah. And the kitchen, which is where you spend most of your time. So I wanted to have this in the front of the house so I can keep tabs on everybody.
Yes. And then that's the screen from the outside the sail, and that obviously provides protection from the sun
You
and
can
the...
see it's a hot day out
Yeah,
there
it'd be
today,
really
but
hot.
see how the growth is just stopping that. And in winter they will go,
Yeah.
and
And you'll have
you
the...
have the warmth of the winter sun coming in. And then by having those things here, that meant that you could put the living room in the back.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
This is where we bring the TV in, watch the movies, snuggle down.
I'm going to be a bit cheeky here, Julie. Already I feel like I'm at home. Oh, it's so neat. Wow, it's a magnificent view. And I really, really like this, by the way. I noticed that coming up the stairs, this sort of double height. It's like, I won't call it an atrium because an atrium's big, but it's a double height space.
This is pure David.
Oh, wow, look at that.
We knew we required a volume as you came in the front door.
Yeah.
And so what he designed were these casement windows, basically. This glass weighs 7 kg, which is the same as that lead weight. So it's in perfect balance and very easy to open.
It's very unique. I've never seen this before anywhere. And it's quite yachting, isn't it? It's a very yachting feel to it.
Well, David liked his ropes, hence the barbecue table. There was no post, no, we've got to hang that.
So lovely to see the quirky and fun stuff in this house, and to appreciate that architecture is not all about the big, the grand, ornate and expensive. But as this house, designed by architects for architects, proves, there are other things at play, like simplicity, sustainability and personality. Julie and David's.
If David could look down and see you now, he'd be like, well, I've left my beautiful wife in a really beautiful home, surrounded by nice people and a good environment, you know, and like...
He's out there somewhere.
He is. He is,
Anyway,
no doubt.
thank you, Matthew.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
Good.